Welcome to the County Fair Podcast. This is the County Fair Podcast, where fair influencers share their valuable insights, strengthening and growing the long-lived tradition of the County Fair. This episode is brought to you by ShoWorks. ShoWorks fair entry software has set the gold standard for fairs across the United States and Canada for more than 20 years, serving more than 75% of the country's fairs. ShoWorks is a place to handle fair entries, billings, payouts, and the incorporation of virtual elements into your show and auction. Visit www.fairsoftware.com to learn more. Today's Bible verse is Deuteronomy 28:8. The Lord will send a blessing on your barns and on everything you put your hand to. The Lord your God will bless you in the land. And now, please welcome your hosts.
Hi, I'm Christina Rudolph.
And I'm Jeffrey Palermo. Christina, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to kick off our first County Fair podcast. We've been talking about it for a while, and here we go.
Absolutely. This is the first episode of the County Fair Podcast where we celebrate the county fair, the local ag community, and the profession of agriculture, which was the first and original profession created by God himself. So it's really exciting. We have two guests today. First off, we have Mike Hnatt, the founder of Gladstone and home to ShoWorks Fair Management Software. Michael, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
How you doing? It's good to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. And we also have Taylor Collins, an auction specialist intern with ShoWorks Auction. Welcome to the show, Taylor.
Howdy. How are you guys?
Fantastic. Great to have you. As we get going, I'm just going to ask the maybe obvious question, but maybe not so obvious to some people. What the heck is a county fair, and why is it so awesome? Christina?
I think that everybody grew up knowing that there was this fair that you got to go to annually or in your surrounding towns. And, it always brought me personally a sense of community, a place to gather, a place of joy and celebrate the community and whatever it had to offer. And then there was the underlying agricultural element of it. It did not matter where you grew up. I personally grew up in Houston, one of the largest cities in the nation, but my world revolved around the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. Did a great job bringing agriculture and agricultural education to those that are in the city itself, as well as a place for people across Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana to come join in those activities and celebrate agriculture. So the county fair itself, for me, that's my experience. And I love listening. I've talked to Mike a lot before about county fairs. I want to hear from Mike. He has been in this business for more than 20 years, and he started it because of a passion with the county fairs. And Mike, share with us your thoughts on county fairs.
Hey, yeah, it's good to hear your background. We have a similar roots to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. As a kid, about 35 years ago or 40 years ago, raising animals and taking them to either the county fair or even the big shows. That was what it was all about. That was our social gathering long before the internet days. So schools would not see many students. We'd have a couple of weeks that we would pretty well be gone. And of course, laws and regulations changed thereafter. But we would go up to these fairs and camp out in the back of our trucks with our heifers and animals. And what a great upbringing. We learned a lot of good work ethics, coming from that background. So loved it, and found my way in from an exhibitor then to rodeo contestant, entertainer, and then finally over into the realm of record keeping. And that, started in the mid 90s.
I don't know that I knew about that entertainment and rodeo participation part.
Obviously, that didn't pan out too well. I didn't quit my day job. But hey, they listened. A great platform to try all kinds of things.
Now, there's tons of different events and community bazaars that happen, but what is it that makes a county fair so special? Because we always go around and the first thing we smell, oh, there's animals here. But talk about the ag roots and why that's so meaningful.
I think most people that might be listening to this podcast, I mean, obviously they're involved in it in some way. We look at our country's founding on the backbone of agriculture. And so long ago, even prior to the founding of the United States, people were having a way to bring the fruits of their labor, whether it be animals or crops or things, to a community gathering that would evaluate those and reward those that have done really well. So genetics, breeding, the animals, if they found a certain type that was more desirable, that's the animals that would get the prize. And marketing, essentially, those people would seek out them to have their animals breed their herds and whatnot. So it was a way of improving agriculture from the get-go, hundreds of years ago. And that just developed into a more formalized way of the community gathering, rewarding for performance of these crops or animals. And it later turned into what we know today as more than just that, more than just entries. So entertainment and fun and really that community gathering.
I think I see a lot of, right now on my Facebook post feeds, I'm seeing tons of friends posting about their kids right now, getting those grand champion reserves and being able to compete and actually achieve quite high levels of being awarded for the hard work that they've put in just in this, past season, prepping for their shows, and the pride that I see coming along with that. So you've got the entries, but you've got the show, you've got the joy and the pride that comes with it. And the really showing that they've accomplished so much. And there's a lot of, I keep using the word pride, but there's a lot of hard work.
Yes,
pride is being shown off there.
That competitive nature, most of my friends that I hung out with back in those days, we would have our trophy, our ribbons across our bedroom wall there. So that's, that really
bragging
highlighted
rights.
Bragging rights. So it's a really, really good thing. And there's so much benefit that comes from this to the community. It's not just the competition, but it's the businesses and the community seeing the fruits of that. And, in this year of absence or last year with COVID, I think a lot of people really miss that. And they yearn for that. We're a social being. We need to get together in some way, whether we're using that as a sporting event, but in that case, you're just focused on the field. But a fair does much, much more than that. Yes, you're looking at the competition, but you're out there seeing what your friends have done and, hey, let's hang out for the day here and eat a lot of really good fattening food.
Right. Well, Taylor, you're from the West Coast. What's your experience with county fair and some of your special moments?
I agree with what you guys were saying. I come from the Central Valley of California, and some people call us the breadbasket of the world because of how much agricultural produce we export. We are number one in almonds. We are number one in all of these agricultural commodities. We have a lot of dairy out here. But one of our mottos at the Big Fresno Fair is this is the closest some people get to going to Disneyland. Their fair is, an experience for their family that is more affordable, but it's family friendly. And it's just a great place for everyone to come and speak and try the food and then see the agriculture and then see the animals. I just think that the county fairs are everything that you could want with food, with entertainment for the average participant. But then you go into the livestock barns and you're seeing these animals and production agriculture and what we do. And it's just educational. And then, sometimes when these participants go, then they want to get involved and they want to do their own animal. And that's really important and special to see for these kids, especially. So out here in California, we really like to make it about the kids as much as we can. And that's the important part to us. And that's what we see out here. So it's just a good opportunity.
Those are the two that I've experienced is being a kid. My local fair growing up was the Fort Bend County Fair, living in Rosenberg. And actually, I lived just a few miles from the fairgrounds, kind of on the edge of town. And I remember the calf scramble, and I remember the entire school district, the entire town, they had fair day. It was a town holiday. Nothing happened because everyone was expected on that day to be at the fairgrounds. And I remember chasing the calves. I wasn't particularly fast. But then later on, now I remember the first time that I took my young kids to the fair, and just kind of seeing their wide eyes and seeing some things for the first time. And so, yeah, it does tend to be about the youth. It's not a commercial endeavor for big companies to come in. It tends to be about the kids, the next generation, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's so educational. I mean, at our fair, we have a milking parlor where we bring in the cows in the morning and we milk them in front of like a stadium for everyone to watch and everyone to see. And they meet our milker and they talk about what they go through every day on a dairy. And, people often forget that their food doesn't just come from a supermarket. Right. Their food is coming from these cows. They're making cheese, they're milking, they're doing all these things. And our farmers are the ones out there working. And this is the first step to educating these kids, to educating their parents, because a lot of people don't get this opportunity. So I think the county fair is just fantastic for education as a whole.
Yeah, Taylor, you hit on the point that is really critical to all of this. In the end of the day, these young kids, not just the ones that are showing, but even more so the urban folks that come in there, they're getting educated, and these are going to be the policymakers of tomorrow. I have seen on countless occasions where, even though we say, yeah, they don't know where an egg comes from. I mean, I think they do, but they get out there and they get contact with, where this all begins. And I've seen in cases where, they're so unfamiliar with how these things are grown and raised. I recall a few years ago at a fair, a group of people that were from the city. They found it appalling that these pigs were not getting any water. They didn't know that you had a little nipple that was routed through the pipes, but they didn't see a bowl, like a dog bowl of water. And, we have this stigma sometimes of them coming in and they don't realize how much we truly, truly care about these animals. And, we're the stewards of that. So it's very important. The fair plays that critical role in educating.
And that is an important point, because when people see things happening within, the industry or within the fair, and they don't understand what's going on, but really it's ethical. Really, we're doing well for the animal, and we have certain regulations that we have to follow. And even more so, it's an opportunity for these kids to get into the industry of agriculture for their future careers. It's just, there's so many opportunities from simply visiting your county fair. I mean, it's just fantastic, but something that can turn into a big project or a big career for these kids and their parents and everyone. But
I think going back to, earlier, I said our roots really came from increasing the quality of agriculture, which that's still an objective, but now that's shifted really to education. I would say that most fairs would agree that that's, the primary underlying role of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's working in my house, Jeffrey. So yeah, my son Michael was 4 years old when he got to show a lamb in the Pee Wee show in Hamilton County, Texas. And he is in love with his animals. And he is definitely declaring already in 6th grade that he will be a wildlife and fisheries major. So we're moving in that direction in this house.
Well, let's get a word in from our sponsor. All right, we're back. Talking with Mike Hnatt, the founder of Gladstone, home of ShoWorks software, and Taylor Collins, an auction specialist intern at ShoWorks. And so talking about how county fairs are so special and that they're really differentiated from any other type of community event. But there's some places that don't have a county fair, and then there's other places that have these massive events. What's the difference? I mean, for people who maybe don't go to a county fair, what should they be looking for?
I'll jump in here though. The variety that we see, we serve, a little over 1,000 fairs in North America, and we see, on the West Coast, on the coast areas, it's huge. You get into, let's say, the more arid areas of the West, the mountain region, they're quite small there. Geography playing a role in some of this too. You get into the Midwest and the Northeast, and it's mostly canning and not mostly canning, but smaller exhibits. Livestock is king here in Texas and Oklahoma, that area. So it's really interesting to see that the geographical layout of these things. But what drives people to the fair is different in each region. I think we can kind of derive from that.
And Taylor, are there a lot of fairs in your region or just a few?
I would say there's quite a few. There's Madera, there's Kings County out here. We have tons and tons of fairs in California. And what's special is that each of them is so different. San Diego County Fair is so fun. They have so many like entertainment rides and everything and different things like that. And then you have like our fair at Fresno, and we have all of those rides, but we also have our deep-rooted agricultural basis. And then at Madera Fair, it's just a fun family community fair, which is really nice. It's one of those smaller fairs that really bases things on their community. I mean, even outside of their fair dates, they're putting on free block parties for their fairs. They're doing all of these special, fantastic events for their community alone. So that's really special because especially with those smaller fairs, you can tell how much they care about knowing the name of the people that come because they show up so much. They want to know about the new baby that, one of their participants, one of their exhibitors, or one of their, parents has had. They want to know them. And it's nice when you can see them walk in and they're like, "Oh, hey, Joe, how are you?" Mm-hmm. It's a completely different experience, which is why, I would suggest that everyone should try and go to a small fair and a big fair and kind of test it out and see, what's going on and which one is better suited for them, I guess.
I see that a lot in a big city, and you have that draw. You have a fair that is set up, and people are going to go to it as it's an event in that town, maybe one of many events taking place. But when you get to that feel of that rural community where the fair has taken over that community, that every business on the square is involved, and they're welcoming every single person that comes into town to participate, it definitely takes on this excitement and feel that you just can't get away from. You have no choice but to, wonder why you're not in that parade. The parade's going by and, there's a chance I could be in it. And, you've got the pageants taking place and the celebration of what that community is known for, whether it be ham, bacon, and eggs or the Tom Tom Festival with all of the turkeys or, whatever it might be, your livestock, your pies, your wine. It's kind of exciting to celebrate a community with the fair.
Can't forget the massive mutton busting.
Always mutton busting. Monster truck rides. Yes.
That you mentioned the excitement that builds, especially in these small fairs. I love the small county fairs. You drive to the area, which I did a lot in my earlier days, and the roads are closed off, or they're routing off. The big thing is happening. But Taylor, you mentioned out west there. When I started this thing 25 years ago or so, I would take a drive up there, and I was amazed at how some of these county fairs were bigger than many state fairs out there. I mean, it was huge. Touring the grounds of San Diego or LA County, or I remember Clark County Fair up in Washington. Just beautiful fairgrounds, huge, huge, huge compared to what we grew up with in the small counties. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it really showcases that a lot of these fairs aren't in it for the money, especially in 2021 when we're struggling with, just making the businesses boom and making our communities feel like they're still a community through the COVID-19 and everything. So, I mean, you've really seen these fairs step up and really take their community by force.
On that, I've heard Mike talk before about, the history of fairs and how even throughout history, a fair is what brings joy to a community, and they're rarely ever canceled. And if they are canceled, they're coming right back in. Mike, expand on that for me.
Yeah. The history of fairs keeping their doors open through the world wars that we've had, the Great Depression, and earlier pandemics was just amazing. That shows to the resilience and the leadership that these fairs had. So when COVID hit last year, many of the fairs, they held on. They opened the doors. They dealt with it. They said, we are agriculture. We're used to, not giving up. So it was a testimony of their resilience and their strength. So, we have a really good history. These are strong people.
Now, we did have some fairs canceled this last year just because of the surprise or government restrictions. But it appeared, and I don't have the data in front of me, but so many fairs, they had to publicly cancel so many events and concerts and all that. But the FFA, the 4-H, the youth, they still raised their animals. And so there was still a fair, but it was kind of like the core of the fair. The nucleus of the fair was there, even though maybe the Midway and the Carnival and all these other events, they couldn't do all that stuff. But the fair still happened because somebody had something that they'd been preparing to bring to fair, and that still happened.
And whenever some of the communities had to shut it down, what did these kids do? They went and started their own grassroots show. And some of them did it virtually, but they still were able to have their show, and even in many cases, as you guys know, have their auction. And many of these auctions exceeded previous non-COVID years. So they actually did quite well. And again, another testament to their resilience.
What we did at the big Fresno fair, we ended up having a drive-through fair eats, where we drove through all of the vendors and everything. And we brought them out, and they stayed in their car, and the vendors brought their food to them.
You could still get the deep fried Oreo.
Nice.
Yes.
Cakes, all right.
I don't know if I want I would not give my kids in the back seat that funnel cake with all the powdered sugar in the car.
No, because you and I, we'd be eating it before they got to it.
Oh, true. They don't get any.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I've enjoyed watching how people have gotten creative, and that drive-through eating is fantastic.
It's good. It's good to hear that's how they handled a lot of the food and vendors. Now, still don't know how they handled the Midway. That's pretty well, that's a tough industry that took a major hit. We saw about a third of the fairs cancel as a whole. Livestock was the most, I guess, kind of had to push through because, you have this steer, you have this hog that you've raised, so you got to do something with it. The pies and the quilts, well, they can wait until next year. But we saw some ingenuity of how these fairs accommodated these animals. They said, okay, all right, our capacity is going to be restricted now down to 1/5. And we'll just phase in different things. We'll phase them in, bring them in, judge them, and then the next department will come in. So they made it work for the most part.
I witnessed some of the drive-through judging. The animals never left the trailer, but the judges stood there while they drove through. Everyone has survived this year. So
there's been various newspaper articles and write-ups of what happens at a fair, but this past year, I was actually able to follow and kind of participate into fairs that I would probably never get a chance to go to because of the smaller capacity, the events that they did have, surrounding the ag entries, which you kind of can't wait until next season. They did the live stream. They live streamed on the net. And so here it was that, okay, yeah, if they have a wide open venue, they have people and they kind of spread out or do whatever they needed to do. But then everybody else could follow online. And I was able just to kind of see how various people did some of their events, like the judging or the awards or the auction. And it's just really, really fun to see and learn from some of the techniques that people use to make it an awesome event.
With the live streaming now, it's so much easier to make that happen. You're not just having to, tune in and only watch NFR on the television. You can now turn on your computer and watch all these fairs. And I think there were a lot of relatives that were really happy living out of state from their grandchildren and nieces and nephews that were able to watch and participate and cheer on. So it definitely opened the doors for a lot more participation.
And also fund too. I mean, these relatives were giving add-ons that they would have never done before, and that's reflected in that. So, and I saw there were mini fairs, auctions that gave these kids a platform to get on the live stream during the auction and tell them about their experience, what all hard work they put in for the season of growing and raising that animal. And so, just imagine the number of imprints that's made to folks otherwise that wouldn't have got a chance to hear that kid.
I feel like this season has catapulted the ag industry, into different ways of communicating, and it's really broadening the ability for everyone to participate, learn, and really be a part of the ag and growing ag in our nation. And
I'll say from the fair, last year people were hunkered down. It's not even the end of March, and I mean this year is a bumper crop for county fairs, and everything's just going like gangbusters. I mean, you have 15 states that got the COVID under control, and they lifted all the restrictions, and more to come. And of course, if you're not in a major city, it's you kind of have that as well. But 2021 is probably going to be a record year for a lot of established county fairs because the entire community wants to go.
Yeah, that compensatory growth, we talk about that in animals, what they do, and now we're seeing it, of course, at the fair. So we're on track. This is our, if it continues like this will be our biggest year in company history as far as the interest, we already see them ramping up with their online entries, and so we really look forward to it.
All right. So as we close up, this is the first episode of the County Fair podcast, and we have a lot in store for this show. We're going to have grand champion winners as guests on the podcast from fairs all over. We're going to have fair managers and board members of people who play a very important role on putting their fair on, and just lots of people who've learned a lot and want to share and teach others. And so if you're someone who wants to learn how to enter something in the fair, stay tuned. If you're somebody who's making a fair happen and want to learn from what other people are doing, stay tuned. And if you just want to connect with other people in the community, stay tuned, because we're just going to have a lot of fun.
You can find out more about the County Fair podcast at thecountyfairpodcast.com. We hope you subscribe and let us know if there's anything you want to hear on any of our upcoming episodes.
And Taylor, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And Mike, great to have you as well. Thank you so much, and thanks for being a supporter of the fair industry.
You're so glad to be here. Thanks, Jeffrey and Christina. Good to see you guys.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the County Fair Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend, and tell us what you'd like to hear on the show by going to www.countyfairpodcast.com. And to you and yours, may God bless you.